It was a wonderful meditation to open into our service. As Veronica said earlier, Dr. Moore is taking the day off, and you are here in Redondo Beach, Center for Spiritual Living, virtually. And I am Katherine McKinney, a staff minister, and Veronica and I are going to be doing the talk today, the message. And we've chosen as our topic the one that Dr. Moore chose. Do you know your purpose? That's a weighty subject, your purpose. And it's important to me that we remember that for some of us right now, there's so much anxiety, our purpose may seem to be to just get through this thing. Indeed, we are getting through this thing. There is another side that we are going toward. But it's also important for me to remember what is important. And so that is where I'm choosing to focus my attention. Ernest Holmes, who is the founder of our teaching that we call Science of Mind, did not set out in life to found a movement or to start a movement. He had an insatiable curiosity as a young child. He was born into a large family. He's the 9th son of 9 children, and they lived in a very rural place in Maine, and he really was an eager, curious child. He asked questions all the time. Why? How? And do you really know if that's true? And he asked these questions of grown-ups. He was called the question mark. And he continued to be that way. He continued to ask questions throughout his teen childhood, and he read. He read everything he could get his hands on, and his parents read to him. He had such an eagerness about him. He was impatient to learn more, but he was not patient in the classroom. At age 18, he left his rural community in Maine and went to Boston to seek his life. He was going to begin life as a public speaker. And a couple of years later, he really randomly picked up a book called The Complete Essays of Ralph Waldo Emerson. It was laying on a coffee table. And over the next 2 days, he consumed that book. He got so excited about what he read. When he read the idea in the essay, Self-Reliance especially, when he read the idea that what I think is as important as what anyone else thinks, that I don't want to be a copy of anyone else. I want to live my life and come from this idea that I am here on purpose. I am uniquely myself. It energized him. And it really began his life journey that ended up with the Science of Mind. His brother later said that that book was the spark that started everything. He also noted that every year of his life, including the last year of his life, Ernest Holmes reread the entire collected book of essays of Ralph Waldo Emerson. So in this time of corona that we find ourselves in, for me, it's been about 9 weeks. And during that time, I have talked to many people. I have read about many others. And we've been all over the place in our reactions and how we feel. As the last couple of weeks, what I've noticed is we seem to have moved into what I call point 2 of the era of corona. Point 1 was marked by this urgency of what do I need to buy? How are we going to do church without any people? And where can I find a mask? The grocery stores were jammed, and there were stories everywhere about how long I waited in line at the grocery store. Indeed, there was also school at home. How do we manage that? And the people who were considered essential workers were working more than ever. And there was this urgency about working all of that out. By the end of April, we seemed to have come to some sort of resolution in the sense that we settled down. We learned how to do what we were doing. Some people started baking and cooking vegetables at home. And those who could sew were making masks. And there was some creativity afoot. And then, a couple of weeks ago, we settled into something else. There was this, seems like there was a resistance to this confinement. And we started expressing how to do that. Some safely and creatively, because by this point, we'd all learned the important things are that we wash our hands, that we wear masks in public, and that we keep a safe distance from those who are not our families. And so as we learn to find some ways to get together and observe all three of those things, we began to be creative and to keep ourselves safe. But there's another thing that I noticed. Some people began to explore and think about not just what they had lost, which is times in a restaurant, meeting someone after work at a bar for a drink, or getting together for lunch, not just losing those things, but what they had gained. A couple of weeks ago, the LA Times put a survey out. It was on Instagram, and people responded, and the question was, what from this period of confinement are you going to keep when we get to the other side? The answers were quite interesting. Well, I'm going to keep eating more salad, someone said. I am going to continue to do small kindnesses for my neighbors. I'm going to maintain an exercise routine. I am going to call my friends more often instead of putting it off till next week. And my favorite was, I'm never going to be so busy that I don't have time to breathe and to think. And so thinking. And that set me into mind, because that's what Ernest Holmes talks about. He talks about right thinking. Such is the power of right thinking, he says, that it can erase and get rid of anything unlike itself. And so what is right thinking? It's thinking the highest things, the most noble things, those whole and complete thoughts, entertaining these thoughts. And that is where he came down on this idea of right thinking. And so isn't it true that maintaining small kindnesses to neighbors, that continuing to communicate with those we love and care about regularly, that taking care of my mind and my body, isn't that right thinking? I think Ernest Holmes would agree. He believed that when you are in the right thinking mode, that is how you recognize that power for good within you. And when you recognize that light, there is nothing that you cannot do. And if you don't, he said it's like covering up the light within you with a bushel or a bucket. Isn't it important that it matters how we think? Isn't it important to know that we can create our lives just as Ernest Holmes learned at age 20? And isn't it a purpose in life to live for the highest and live for the best and allow the knowing of that to flow into our lives in a way that brings us good that we cannot imagine? I believe it is. I thank you all for listening today. And next, I want to introduce to you someone you've already met today. Veronica Silva is not only a practitioner at our center, She is a ministerial student, and she's a ministerial student that is almost complete with her path. In a very short months, she will make the transition into ministry. We are all very pleased and proud and happy for Veronica for all she's doing. But she's also, in her day job, she is an RN, and she works full-time in this profession. She has been busy, and she still takes time to think and to breathe. I know she does. And so please, let me welcome to you my colleague, my friend, Veronica Silva.
Thank you, Reverend Katherine. Beautiful message. Good morning. Our life purpose. Yes, that is a weighty topic indeed, because sometimes we cannot stop thinking, what is my purpose in life? But Ernest Holmes tells us that spirit's purpose, the purpose of spirit, is to express itself. The purpose of spirit is to express itself. That's the macrocosm, the big all that is. We, the individuals, the microcosm, Ernest tells us that our biggest longing as humankind is to express our own divinity. So the microcosm, the individualization of spirit, longs to express its own divinity. So spirit's greatest purpose is to express itself, and our purpose is to express our own divinity. So what does that look like in everyday life is the question. What does that look like? Well, in going through Eckhart Tolle's book, A New Earth, he talks about our purpose. What is our purpose? He talks about an outer purpose and an inner purpose. And when he talks about an outer purpose, I understand it to be what are we to do in this world that's going to make a difference? What goals are we going to set for ourselves? What's our intention for our life? And when we speak of this, we're talking about something that's not happened yet, or maybe we're working on it. And it's something maybe that we can perceive as being in the future, so that it's not happening now. So most people have life goals, and I want to live my purpose. But there's another purpose called the inner purpose. And this is where we become present to the now moment. And in this now moment is the presence of God. And that when we stop, or at least slow down, that we see and are present to the presence, that we can feel and notice the minute details of life, and we can feel the connection with all that is when we are present to the moment. And that all we have actually is this moment. And then we have this moment. And then we have this moment. And that the accumulation of moments become what we call our future. And sometimes when we are setting goals and striving towards them, we miss the moment because we're busy or we're stressed. And Eckhart tells us that the ends does not justify the means. That sometimes when we're striving towards our goals, whether that's ministerial school or getting groceries at the store, that's a goal sometimes, that the stressors does not give us permission to treat others poorly or to take advantage of situations. That's not being in the moment. And if the means is not fulfilling and creating happiness in the world, in the moment, then the ends won't either. Because the end and the means are one. It's an accumulation of now moments. So who we are being now is what our future is going to look like. So our purpose is to be in this moment and recognize, who am I being? Who am I being right now? And if you don't like it, which, that happens, it's called human nature, that we have the opportunity to change our thinking and thus change our life. And when we are present to all that is, we get answers that we could not see before, because we're present to all that is, to the possibilities and the potentiality that is always present to us, but we can miss because we're thinking about the things that we need to do, or I wish I wouldn't have said that, or how am I going to do this? It's not that we are not living life, we're living life, and we're living it right now. And yes, we still show up for our job, and yes, we still pay our bills, but we're present to what's possible. Therein lies all that is. And we're pulled from that purpose. We're pulled, and what's pulled from us is our talents and our gifts that show up as our purpose, our outer purpose out in the world. So when we're present, we can feel that pull and take action that corresponds with our inner purpose and outpictures as our outer purpose. Yes. This takes practice. This takes practice. Reverend Katherine talked about it, about our mind. And when we say change our thinking, we're really training our thoughts. Because if we don't control our thoughts will control us. And right now is the perfect time. Because of what is present out in the media, it's very easy to go down into that dark valley. But when we can be present right now to all that is, and say, all right now, in this moment, I am well. And then in the next moment, right now, in this moment, I am well. Then that moment and that moment become your future. Yes. And how does this outpicture his life? Well, Reverend Katherine talked about, yes, I am a nurse working in a hospital. Didn't know that I signed up for a pandemic at the time that I signed up to be a nurse. But I know and I trust that I am placed in the perfect place at the perfect right time. And being a mom, and being a wife, and being a nurse, and being a daughter, and having elder parents, all of these thoughts not only crossed my mind, but I'm sure have crossed your mind. How am I going to take care of myself, my family, my parents? And what I know is that there is a power greater than myself, and that I, in my own individuality, don't have to do that by myself. And it has been a journey over the past few months of learning to acknowledge when I am in fear, because there are times in the hospital where I was in fear. The whole PPE and all of that, and making sure that I was protected at the hospital, making sure my nurses were protected, and that I came home and didn't transmit anything to my family. That was a reality. But I knew back of all things, is a presence. And I had trusted that, and that's where I kept my mind and my focus. And that's where I continue to keep my mind and my focus, and knowing that the presence is always here, divinely working as me and through me. And then knowing that all else will fall into place. And the good news is you know that the numbers are coming down now, and although, we're seeing the numbers and we're relaxing a little, it's still important, as Reverend Katherine said, is to stay mindful and present to what's important to you. There's lots out there on the media that can pull you in lots of different directions. So this is an important time to go within into your inner purpose and see and know what is right for you to do, what is the highest good for you to do. Yes, God's purpose is to express itself. And our purpose is to express the divine within as our individualized gifts and talents on this earth, and to be present to each other, the love, the God, the joy, the well-being that is everywhere present right now in this moment. I thank you so much, and namaste.